Question. What percentage of your workforce do you think will still be with you 6 months from now? What about a year? Now, I know it might seem like an era, 2025, where we have absolutely no shortage of numbers and things to be concerned about with our business, with employees, but unfortunately, I have a couple more. New research shows that nearly 75% of Gen Z, so the generation that is youngest in the workforce, of course, we have a little bit of Gen Alpha, with Gen Alpha starting around 2010, being born 2010. So we have a tiny amount of those, but primarily the youngest generation in the workforce is Gen Z, with three-quarters of them basically being open or actively seeking another job opportunity. That's very concerning. And we might think, well, what's going on with millennials? They're in their late 20s to early 40s. We might be doing better there, right? No, we are only a couple percentage points. We're clocking in at about 70% of them are looking for a job change. So that's concerning. And when we start to dial in and look at the reasons for them looking for another job change, we hear a lot about emotional exhaustion, burnout, stress and strain, working with the team. All of those things are highly concerning and lead me to what, why you might have clicked on this. The topic is emotional labor. So, emotional labor is used in a lot of different contexts. You might have heard about it talked about in terms of, families and marriage and relationships. But in the workplace, it means how we navigate the discrepancy between what we are truly feeling at a moment and the emotions that are necessary for us to display as part of performing our jobs. Because we don't often think about it. We think about cognitive demands. They need to be able to think analytically, solve problems, or they need to be able to lift 50 pounds or perform something else. But there are huge emotional demands on each of us in our jobs, and it's absolutely critical and even more salient when we're thinking about service work. And this got me thinking because I wrote a little bit earlier this year about the idea of there being a hospitality bubble, that we have this small group of people potentially in the service industry and or people available to us to employ in service focused jobs, whether that's hospitality, restaurants, maybe even some in healthcare and other capacities. There might have been a lot of different events that lead people to just not consider any type of customer service facing job as something that they would want to do because of difficulties that they've had in the past in the industry. And this connection with emotional exhaustion driving the intentions to leave brought me to think about, and what you can read about more in the blog that we put together, the key role of emotional labor in work and how we can help hire and develop and support people to thrive in emotionally demanding jobs. Emotional demanding meaning lots of customer service or a lot of a lot of times jobs that also require a lot of serving and taking care of customers also require a lot of internal customer service where you're working with others in a different department to coordinate service and care, whether that's a restaurant, a hotel, or any number of different service related occupations. But even if we're talking about, corporate or other types of work, there's always a key component of working and supporting with others, whether you're in, accounting or HR, where you're the lead and responsible for a core business function and how you support others internally. That can carry a certain degree of emotional labor and strain. And that we often think about just that need for adaptability or problem solving, and we overlook the role that emotional labor plays in the workplace and how emotional labor is a key demand and expectation. Simultaneously, related to what I was just talking about, we hear a lot about being skills-based and taking a skills-based approach to hiring and also to development and how we support people in their growth and maturity and journey throughout an organization. And as we try to focus more on skills and how we fill positions relevant to the skills that are required, if we look at some of the biggest skills that we need, the biggest skill gaps in the workforce, we can see that there's a theme of or a thread of emotional labor throughout. So communication is one that we hear a lot about, that people aren't having difficult conversations, for example, or how people communicate through writing. all of those things do have that emotional labor piece where we're trying to, influence others, have a desired outcome, and how we do that by first, managing our own emotions so that we can deliver what the other person needs to perceive me as in that situation. We also hear about adaptability, how we respond with resilience in tough situations. Our skill in managing our own emotions and adapting to that situation, adapting our emotions to that situation is absolutely key. So, when we look at emotional labor more deeply, there's a few different strategies that we can have. So, first is just genuine felt emotions. So, that would be where I have a customer, they're frustrated about a delay or something not being done to expectations. And I'm just able, oh my gosh, let me take care of you. I feel true empathy that you didn't receive what you had intended. So we think about that in terms of being a sort of deep acting as well, where we're able to maybe reframe the situation. Maybe initially I feel a discrepancy. I don't understand what the customer is needing, but I know I need to show that concern or that they maybe are looking for someone to deal with that's more they would have the best experience with working with someone who is positive, highly energetic. So it could be that maybe I'm a server or I'm someone in that kind of capacity at a restaurant or something similar, and I can recognize that a group is just they would have the best experience with someone who is equally upbeat. They're having a party that I have that high energy and that positivity along with them, and then I'm able to just genuinely or reframe the situation such that I can deliver that in a more natural way, that I'm not faking being that, high energy, happy, fun person on my own. Or what if I'm taking care of someone on my team? So this could be any type of job where I'm working with someone who's new and I recognize that they maybe need someone who is exceptionally understanding, that moves through things relatively slowly, gives them lots of understanding and encouragement. And I just may not be in that place where I can be exceptionally encouraging and understanding at that time. I can either try to reframe the situation. Okay, this is important to this person. I care about giving them a great experience. I care about their support and development. This is important. I was in a similar situation X number of years ago, and I'm grateful that I had someone to train me in a way that supported my growth and development. So in those ways, I'm again able to more actively engage and deliver a more authentic emotion than just simply putting on a mask. But that said, especially when we're talking about customer service work, hospitality, sometimes it's necessary just to move fast and be able to recognize, okay, this is the high energy group of guests at a restaurant that are having a really good time. And if I'm more high energy and energetic, they're going to have a better time. Or I'm very tired. It's near the end of my day. And I have this new employee that I'm trying to support. And so even though I'm frustrated that they haven't learned this skill yet, I need to just look like I'm patient, even though I'm not feeling patient at the moment. So, those are some of the intricacies of emotional labor, and we do have assessments available to screen for people and help highlight those emotional labor, those skills relevant to emotional labor. That self awareness, the ability to adapt what I'm delivering, and maybe be able to deliver that in a way that's more authentic so I don't burn out and I don't have that emotional exhaustion that I'm going home with on a regular basis that's going to lead me to consider other opportunities. So, when we're seeing that high intention to maybe leave a job, I'm wondering just globally how much of that is linked to not preparing our teams either through hiring or also through development to manage this core aspect of our jobs, the emotional labor piece that we often overlook. Just like we can assess for it in hiring, we could also have ways of talking about and having training and support so that people can understand how they are meeting those emotional demands and if they're simply constantly putting on a mask and inauthentically delivering emotions that they can connect more deeply with the situation or if they're lacking the resources to be able to take care of the guest or the customer or their fellow team member that we're aware of that and we're able to change policy, provide them with resources, guidance, training, so that they can better do what they need to do in that situation and not feel that they're restricted and they have to simply deliver emotions and hope that they can take care of the situation without having the tools and the backing to support them. So that, in short, as we're encountering, more and more of people potentially considering to leave, and if they are considering new opportunities, that could also mean that even if they can't leave, if there's not an opportunity for them to leave, just because they don't leave doesn't mean we don't incur costs from their intentions to leave. We see again and again through our own employee surveys that people who are, actively seeking work or considering it are, more likely to be disengaged. It shows up in how they work with their team, their willingness to support others, and performance declines over time. So just because people are staying doesn't mean that we're getting the most out of each person, that we have their full engagement, their full commitment, or that we're delivering everything that we can to be a remarkable place to work that fully supports them and who they are as people and their what's best for them. So, the emotional labor piece, I would encourage you to think about and consider going forward how you can better support your teams in managing the emotional demands of their work. And of course, that starts with hiring, but also training and supporting those in, especially in emotionally demanding roles.